Starting. And we're live. What's up, everybody? Let me know how my audio is. Let us know if the video and audio is okay. If there's any problems, comment in the little live chat section. If you're watching and you can't comment, that's because you're not signed into YouTube or Google Plus. So make sure you sign in, and then you can comment. So I announced this one kind of late because I've been having internet problems lately, and the rainy season here in the Andes of Ecuador has kicked off in proper fashion, and we had about 2 weeks of raining all day, every day, and very weak internet access, very weak cell phone service, and very intense cabin fever. Now, all right, so Seamus says the audio is good. Fleets Enema, lovely name. Thanks for joining us again. Fleets Enema says hello. I'm here with Amy Berger. Is that how you say your name? Is it Berger?
It is Berger, like hamburger, but with an E instead of a U.
Okay. I'm glad you didn't say like, no, jerk, it's Berger or something like that.
I wish it was. I wish it was a sexy sounding French name, but it's just Berger.
Okay. Well, I could edit this later if you want to change it for the internet later. I'm here with Amy, and if anybody follows us, the Primal Edge Health Facebook page, I posted one of her amazing blogs from her website, tuitnutrition.com. And as soon as I read this blog, I knew that I had to talk to her because she was saying so many things that I've said so many times. And she says it in such a biting and intelligent way. I knew that she was a kindred spirit, a kindred soul. So I had to get Amy on. And here I am with Amy. Now, Amy runs tuitnutrition.com. She does nutrition counseling. She is, let me pull up her credentials here so I get it right. She's got a master's degree in human nutrition from the University of Bridgeport, and she's a certified nutrition specialist and certified nutritional therapy practitioner. She is a low-carb friendly certified nutritional therapy practitioner, and she works with a lot of people on low-carb diets and has seen the same madness that I point out all the time on this channel. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to try to clear up some of these myths about ketogenic diets, low-carb diets, and just whatever piques our interest. Check out Tuit Nutrition. That's Tuit nutrition.com. And if you guys got any questions or comments along the way, we might be able to pull some from the audience comments. I've got your comments here. Sometimes I don't look at them because it can be distracting. So play nice, everybody, in the comments section also. Amy, how's it going?
It's going well. I'm glad to meet you. I think I feel the same way about you that you do about me. I found you on Ketogains, and then I was looking at your YouTube channel, and you say the same things I do about trying to inject some sanity into this whole process.
What happened? Why why has the keto community become like the polar? I was going to say polar opposite, but it's not polar opposite. It's like this mirror of the vegan community now almost. I mean, we've got infighting about macronutrient ratios, infighting about percentages, the relevance of ketones, too much protein, not enough protein. There's so much going on out there that it's just insane. So I mean, how did you get into this, I guess, is a good place to start. And then we can maybe start talking about some of the myth-busting stuff. Let's talk about what's right with it. And let's talk about what everybody can agree upon first. We're not trying to push buttons and step on toes and poke people and point the finger. We're just trying to clear the air, guys. So anybody who's watching, please don't take it personally if we happen to disagree with something that you might be saying. It doesn't mean we don't like you personally. Please don't send us angry emails. We're just putting our opinions out there, and from our research and from our years of working with individuals and clients on these approaches for fat loss and optimization of brain function and life in general, we've learned quite a bit, and we're just here to share with you and try to clear the air about some of these things. So let me just put that out there so nobody gets too mad about this if we do happen to disagree, because we should be able to disagree in a civil manner, in an intelligent manner, without taking it personally and throwing rocks and looking for ways to one up each other. That's not what it's about. So yeah, how did you get into this whole low carb world, Amy?
Well, I before I get into that, I want to echo what you said about this isn't a contest about who's the most right or who's wrong and pointing fingers. In that blog post you mentioned, my year-end keto rant, I will call it. I was very clear to point out that I was not attacking ketogenic diets. I was not trying to badmouth, anyone who eats a particular way because they get a certain result. And I think um, some of the polarization comes in because no, I'm not going to say nobody's wrong and everybody's right. I mean, the fact is there's so much nuance to this that everybody's right in some way, right? Everything works for somebody, but that doesn't mean that everything works for everybody. Meaning, there are some people out there who do seem to do very well with very, very high fat and kind of moderate and limiting protein. Other people actually do better with a little more protein and a little lower fat. So nobody's right or wrong. It just depends on who the person is. And so there's merit in most of the approaches. I just think people need to be careful about generalizing when they talk about an approach and trying to make it sound like it's appropriate for everybody. That's why, like in my blog posts are so long because I go out of my way to make sure I'm clear that things are depending on context and just because something works for somebody doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody else. So I think that's where some of the polarization comes in. We all have our own biases, and like, well, this works for me, you should try this. Well, that's great. It worked for you. You don't have the same situation, the same history, the same circumstances that somebody else has. So, all right, that being said, who am I? If anyone out there doesn't know who I am, I got into this kind of stuff the way a lot of other people do, and that is I was overweight, and I still have a couple of pounds to lose. I'm not a supermodel right now, but I was carrying a significant amount of extra weight despite doing what we're told or quote quote all the right things. I was eating a good diet, lots of whole wheat toast with margarine, um, and I mean, I was in the Air Force. Like, I'm not afraid of a hard workout. I'm not undisciplined, and the weight just wouldn't budge. And I would compare myself to friends that I knew ate way worse than I did, ate garbage all day, didn't work out at all, and were slimmer. And it used to just drive me crazy. And at some point, I think it was when I was in college, actually, I found the Atkins book, the 1992 version of Dr. Atkins's book, and it just made sense. It was a little weird to me because it was, at that time, the late 90s, we were still steeped in the low fat, high whole grain paradigm. And it was so hard for me to believe that I could eat heavy cream and butter and red meat and lose weight, and not just lose weight, but not die of a heart attack. Okay, great, I'll lose weight. I understand that, but I'm going to clog my arteries. Well, I just gave it a try because frankly, I was desperate. I mean, nothing else I did worked. And lo and behold, carb restriction worked. And so for me, I came at it from a weight loss background. I didn't have any health issues, but over time, over the years that I've been learning about this, my interests now are much more in the health sphere than the weight loss. I mean, I still like to help people with fat loss, but I'm much more interested now in the effects of these type of diets on, type 2 diabetes and PCOS. And I just wrote a book about Alzheimer's disease. So it's fascinating to me how much this diet does on, there's really no body system that it doesn't affect in some way.
So we got a question here from the audience. I don't usually pull questions from the audience right away, but I mean, you mentioned you started eating a high-fat diet and you didn't die of a heart attack. So, I mean, let's back up a little bit. I know you and I probably don't might not be fun to answer some of these questions anymore, but is cholesterol bad after all or not? That's a question from the audience right there. Is dietary cholesterol the demon we've made it out to be?
It is not. I mean, period. End of story. I could recommend a bunch of books. No. You know, cholesterol is kind of not even really an innocent bystander. It's actually a protective element. And when we see cholesterol in the arteries of people that have heart disease or heart attacks, it's not there causing the problem. It's actually there as a repair mechanism. Um, And, in most people, not everybody, but most people, dietary cholesterol has very little effect on the cholesterol level in your blood. There's kind of a dance between your liver and what you eat. And the more cholesterol you eat, the less your liver has to manufacture. The less cholesterol you eat, the more your liver has to manufacture. And really, the amount of cholesterol in your blood at any one time is the amount of cholesterol that your body needs to be in your blood at that time.
There you go. All right. So I'm not sure how many more questions from the audience we'll pull. We're getting a lot of random questions here. I'm gonna pull this aside so I don't see the questions for a few minutes, guys. If we don't answer your questions, don't get upset. We've got a lot of things that we want to talk about, and Amy is a wealth of information. She's been doing this for a long time. She's obviously very articulate and intelligent and can explain these concepts very, very well. So I want to go back and talk a little bit about this article that really kick-started our entire our online relationship now that has blossomed into this beautiful podcast. Why did you write this article, this blasphemous article telling everybody that it's not really the best idea that everybody follows strict medical ketogenic diet ratios? And so I guess maybe we can start out by defining the medical ketogenic diet, which was developed to treat children with refractory epilepsy in the 1920s. It was the 20s, right? It was the 30s.
I think so.
Okay, so what is the medical ketogenic diet, and why are people so confused about this macro ratio of 3-to-1, 4-to-1, 80% fat? How do I, how many calories do I need if I got 80% fat? There's so much confusion out there. What happened? Why did you write this article?
I wrote this article because, frankly, I was tired of getting emails from, potential clients who were contacting me because they were, eating a ketogenic diet, eating very high fat, moderating their protein, and they were not getting the results they wanted, whether it was that they weren't losing body fat or they were tired, didn't have enough juice to get through a workout, or just didn't feel well. They just didn't, they hear all these magic stories about how ketogenic diets just give you so much energy and clarity of thought and just, it's magical unicorns and rainbows and everything gets better. And they were not feeling that. And
even though they had elevated blood ketones, they weren't losing weight? What?
Yeah. Oh, my ketones are at, 2.5 and I'm not, or just I'm in ketosis and I'm still not getting results. And
yeah,
I was
tired of, I'm in ketosis.
Exactly. And I was I hadn't been very active on Facebook for a long time, and I finally started, commenting on different keto Facebook groups because I figured like that's where people are in the 21st century. That's what I need to do. And I was just so kind of disheartened by all the confusion that I saw. And I was tired of having to say the same thing over and over and over again. So I just decided I'm going to say it all in one place. And that way, if I get emails like that, I can just say, here's your homework, read this blog post. So I think the confusion comes in. I don't know if it's just semantics, but everybody is using the phrase ketogenic diet and we all define it differently. And I think that's where some of the trouble comes in because like you were saying, the medically therapeutic ketogenic diet is usually defined as a 3-to-1 or 4-to-1 ratio of fat to combined carbs and protein. So meaning you would eat 4, whether it's in, I think it's total calories or grams. I'm not sure. I don't remember how they measure it, but let's say it's total calories. You would eat 4 times as much fat as combined carbs and protein. So
yeah, it's calories in that case. And then you translate it to what is the 80% fat. And that's the dogma now that most people are into, right? Like 80% fat.
Right.
There's a video from, there's a guy, I'm not trying to call people out, but I mean, I think it's important that we do peck through these ideas and really unpack these. But there was a video recently that was going around in a lot of these keto forum groups, like on Facebook and whatnot. And it was a guy, he's a bodybuilding.com, like a bodybuilder, very, very large man, looks possibly assisted in this largeness, chemically assisted.
That's a nice word for it.
Yeah, so he's with a little help from his friends. and a little help from bodybuilding.com, this guy's become like this ketogenic spokesperson. And if you listen to what he actually says, it's just the same thing. It's like, well, if you're not doing that well, if you're not feeling good, if you're not getting into ketosis on your pee strips, maybe you're eating too much protein and you're not eating enough fat. Pump that fat up and drop that protein down without even saying like, oh, this is how much protein you will be requiring for this amount of muscle mass or this amount of activity level. There's nothing. It's just you're probably eating too much protein.
Did you cut out? It's frozen. You guys, I think we lost Tristan. Or maybe he lost me. I don't know.
I'm just keeping you guys guessing. I'm back.
Okay, there you are.
All right. So basically what I was saying is there's a lot of repetition out there. And seeing this article and having these ideas really laid out there. And let me say the name of this article one more time for anybody who hasn't visited her website, Tuit Nutrition. Her recent blog post from December 28th is called "Stop Following a Medically Therapeutic Diet Just 'Cause," aka the Keto Train to Crazy Town. Oh, it's an inflammatory title. I think a lot of people, some people might have been offended by that. But wait, why are there two? Hide from okay.
I actually disabled the comments on that blog post because I just didn't want to deal with it. And I know that's a cowardly thing to do, but I just didn't want to deal with it. I expected to get a lot of pushback from that post. And if I did, they posted it someplace else, which is fine.
I mean, if you read the title, it might be offensive, but then if you actually read the article, she lays out these ideas in a very succinct and intelligent way. I mean, she straight up says, look, if you're dealing with cancer or epilepsy, then the medical therapeutic diet, of course, is going to be highly relevant to you. But yeah, I mean, you guys definitely check out this article. Amy, sorry to interrupt and then drop off in the middle of my interruption. Let's continue unpacking this.
I think people, again, it's semantics. People think, oh, okay, I've heard about the ketogenic diet. I've heard it's really good for weight loss, or I've heard it's really good for blood sugar. Let me do some research on it. And maybe they come across a website that uses the ketogenic diet as a medical treatment for something. And, someone who's young and fit and athletic and healthy doesn't have to follow a diet intended to reverse a very serious medical issue. They can. They're not prohibited from doing so, and they may even feel well while doing so. But I wrote my blog post to help the people who do not feel well doing so, because there are reasons why a diet intended as a medical therapy is not necessarily something that's going to get people the results they want if they're trying to get six-pack abs, or they're trying to do, I don't know what, control their blood sugar or some other issue. There's just a variety of different approaches that can work. And my biggest pet peeve is how the phrase low carb now is no longer in vogue. It's no longer, acceptable. And I say that I'm ketogenic friendly because I can help people with a ketogenic diet, but I so much prefer to use the phrase low carb, because low carb, it's such a wider spectrum. Low carb could be, a ketogenic diet is low carb, but depending on who you ask, a low carb diet could be as high as 100 grams of carbs a day, because compared to what the average American is eating, 100 grams of carbohydrate is pretty low.
And depending on the individual, a ketogenic diet could be like 50 to 75 grams of carbs per day as well. I mean, this is it's all about context. So I think this whole, I get the question so much about the 80% fat. I mean, for somebody who's doing, let's just give this, it's the new year, right? So a lot of people are probably contacting you, like they're contacting me about fat loss. Everybody's trying to lose weight, lose body fat in particular. Is 80% fat relevant to somebody who's got 100 pounds that they're trying to drop off of their frame?
Probably not. And I say probably because there are people who do well with very, very high fat. Or for some people that have a very large amount of fat to lose, at first, for a while, they can eat a lot of fat and they will still tap into their stored fat to use as fuel. But those people, as they get closer to their goal weight, they may find that they have to cut back a little on fat in order to force their bodies to use the stored fat as fuel and get rid of it, which is what the goal is in body fat loss. But I dislike the percentage model so much when we say 80% fat or, 10%, 15% protein, because percentages are irrelevant unless we know the total calories somebody's eating. An 80% fat could be very, very high, or it could be kind of low, depending on the total calories and depending on someone's needs. And when on some of these Facebook groups and these ketogenic forums, people come for advice and they say, here's my situation and here's my goal and I'm not getting there. There's all these people jump in with advice, except nobody's asking, what are you eating now that you're not getting your results? They say, oh, well, I'm not in ketosis or I'm not doing this. And people will say, you need more fat, you need more protein, you need less protein, you need to lift, you need to do this. And no, but the first question should be, tell us exactly what you're doing now so we can see where you might be going wrong without making suggestions completely in the dark.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and how, I mean, your BMI, your body mass index, like or just how much you weigh.
Right. I mean, I get
seeing
people,
a photograph of what you look like and see what kind of body fat levels you've got. What is your activity level like? Are you working night shifts? Are you stressed out all the time? Like, all these things come into play. And I
get a lot of people asking me about fat loss. And if it's the first time somebody emails me and they say, I want to lose weight or I want to get down to this body fat, my first question is, what do you weigh now? Because you'd be surprised, I get a lot of women, especially younger women, who are already at a healthy weight and they want to lose more weight. And I'm not saying that's wrong. Everyone has their own aesthetic goals or they have a desired physique that they want to attain. But there are reasons why someone who's already lean and already at a healthy weight might struggle to lose even more. We're not talking about somebody that has 100, 150 pounds to lose.
Yeah. I mean, the individuals who are like, oh, I can see a little bit of my abs, but I want more. It's so, like, people will tell you they want weight loss or fat loss, or like, I'm sick of being overweight. And then you'll talk to them and they've got maybe like 10 pounds till their ideal in their mind body weight. And they might be at healthy body weight already. And you're just dealing with some, psychological schisms that are making them insecure about the carry too. I mean, there's so many caveats to this whole thing. It's not just as easy as get into ketosis and you lose weight, right? I mean, there's another thing, a whole section of your article talking about, okay, elevated ketones, or if I eat more fat, I get higher ketones. Therefore, if I eat more fat, I'll get more results because ketones equal results. Why is that confusing? And what is confusing about that? And what's wrong with that statement?
Yeah, first, I'm looking at my screen here. I look really dark, so my apologies to anyone out there. It looks like I'm sitting in a cave or something. The lighting in my house is not very good. I think the confusion about ketones and weight loss, I'm actually less angry about it now than I was when I wrote that post, because I just think people just have the wrong information, and I can't blame them for having the wrong information when a lot of what they see leads them to believe that being in ketosis is what causes fat loss, or it's required for fat loss. Like, you can't lose fat unless you're in ketosis, which is completely incorrect. Clearly, not everyone on the planet who's ever lost weight has been on a ketogenic diet. Ketones, like I wrote, are the result of breaking down fat. They're not the cause of breaking down fat and losing body fat. And ketones are the byproduct of breaking down fatty acids, either from your stored body fat or from fat in the food that you eat. So even if you're in ketosis, and this is where that very, very high fat percentage comes in with people who are struggling to lose body fat, you can be in ketosis. You can pee purple on a pee strip. You can measure your blood ketones and be elevated, but you have no idea whether those ketones are coming from breaking down your stored body fat or from, the half cup of mayonnaise that you added to your chicken salad. And I know, from personal experience that you can actually gain body fat while in ketosis, because I've done it. And I've done it with mayonnaise, and I've done it with peanut butter, and I've done it with cheese. Some
Now
people
there's
can
an
eat.
interesting thing too. I mean, it's like it does. There's these foods that are hyper palatable, these foods that are really easy to overeat, and they might even have a higher inflammatory effect in the body, like loading up on some of these polyunsaturated fatty acids and things like peanut butter can lead to more fat gain and more inflammation, which can block the burning of fat. Now, I'm not trying to freak people out about like eating a little peanut butter, but I mean, these are issues. It's like if you're doing a junk food keto diet, expect to get junk food keto diet results. I mean, we're always talking
That's
about
a
whole
really
food
good.
on the show.
That's a good phrase. I love that phrase. I'm going to steal that phrase.
You
But
take
I
it. You
think
can trademark it yourself.
I think people, for me anyway, and probably a lot of other people, as I was gaining fat at that time, I realized that the majority of my fat was coming from condiments and coming from extra sources like mayonnaise or olive oil or butter. I mean, cheese isn't a condiment, but it could be considered one. And when I cut way back on that stuff, and I was still eating fatty meat, I was still eating high fat foods, but I wasn't adding a lot of extra fat in the form of sauces and condiments. I lost a couple of pounds in pretty short order. So it could be a total calorie issue, and it probably is, but I think the point is it's so easy to consume tons and tons of calories from those outside, added fats.
Yeah, I mean, they're
It's
so
it's not as it's
delicious
not as
too.
easy to consume. It's not as easy to consume an extra 1,000 calories from ribeye steak. It's really easy to do that with a couple of tablespoons of.
Okay, everything okay, guys? I
Did you
think
drop
Amy.
out again? You're there.
I don't think I did, or maybe I did, or maybe you did. But you
Oh,
were
I don't
saying
know.
it's very easy to consume a few extra 100 calories from some of these foods, and I completely agree, man. I can crush a jar of peanut butter right now, um, and uh, and I know I can gain fat on a high fat, very very low carb diet too, because I've done it.
Yeah,
I can also lose fat pretty
right.
quickly that way as well. But yeah, I mean,
Because
there's a
here's
lot of.
here's the thing that I think some people miss, and they say some people say if you're hungry, eat more fat, right? They say the fat is the most satiating macronutrient. It'll fill you up, it'll keep you satisfied. For me personally, and in clients, I have seen that is not the case. Protein will keep me full because I can eat a big chunk of meat and be stuffed for a while. But I can sit
Right.
there with a stick of butter or a jar of mayonnaise or a jar of olive oil and just eat fat, and it doesn't fill me up at all. So I don't know where the eat more fat comes in. Maybe if you are eating more fat from a whole food, but even something like nuts, which we consider a whole food, there's a reason why a lot of fat loss programs on keto, specifically for fat loss, eliminate nuts. Nuts are very, very high in fat, very calorically dense, and they're extremely easy to overeat.
Oh man, especially like if it's in a nut butter, right? I mean, and cheese as well.
Oh yeah, that's
And
even more.
I love these foods. I think they're great. They have their place. Look, if you're on a ketogenic style diet or a low carb diet and you're trying to put on lean muscle mass or even gain weight, which a lot of the clients I work with are people who've had a history of extreme dieting, and sometimes they do want to be able to gain weight, but in a more healthy and controlled manner to where they're not bouncing around all the time. Hey, in those cases, maybe, crushing some more nuts and including more cheeses and um, perhaps even making some of your own mayonnaise using olive oil instead of the stuff you're buying at the store made out of the vegetable oils. And you could find that
Right.
recipe in the Ketogenic Edge cookbook. We'll plug for my wife's cookbook there. You want to learn how to make mayonnaise, check it out. But yeah,
Yeah,
you
these
can
these
make
foods are
nutrient
not
dense versions.
these foods are not off limits. It just depends on the goal. Do you want to gain weight? Then you probably need more fat and more calories. If you want to lose weight, if you are not one of the people that does well with very, very high fat, you know, take out the nuts and cheese or take out the
Where
mayo
did
or
you hear
whatever
this?
it is.
Wait. Let's back up. Let's back up. Where did you hear this information, this crazy information that energy balance and caloric intake matter for fat loss? I've seen some of these blogs and they just say all that matters is ketones. If your ketones are high, if you're not eating sugar, if you're not eating carbs, then you're going to lose fat, right? I mean, I thought energy balance doesn't matter. Calories in, calories out is not, it's obviously, it's BS, right?
Well, I'm gonna be totally honest with you, Tristan, and honest with the audience. I used to think that way. And I fully admit, I used to think that calories in, calories out, it's nonsense, it's garbage, it's what led me astray, it's what has disappointed so many of us who did calorie counting and didn't lose weight, right? However, from personal experience, again, of having been in ketosis and gained body fat, I know that energy balance does matter. However, I will say it seems that it is more difficult to gain weight on a ketogenic diet than it is on a more standard type diet. You can still gain weight, you will still gain weight, but it will be more difficult. At least for me, it was. But
Yeah.
I also think it's they've done those overfeeding studies, right? Those overfeeding studies where not on a ketogenic diet, they'll feed people in a metabolic ward or not. It just obscene amounts of food, and some people don't gain weight. Or they gain a lot less than we would expect them to. So I think in terms of the math, kind of nonsensical only because we are not bomb calorimeters. The human body is not a closed system where we completely 100% oxidize every molecule of fuel that we consume. A lot of it gets wasted as heat. Well, I guess that's energy, but you know what I'm saying? I mean, we don't burn food and burn calories the way machines do. And that's how these calories were determined in the first place. Foods were put into machines, they were completely burned, and we saw how much energy happened in that process. I think it is possible to gain weight on a ketogenic diet. It's harder to do because the diet, at least in most people, is so satisfying. You're not wanting to snack all the time. You're not wanting to overeat because you eat foods that fill you up and you're good to go for a couple of hours. And I think that may be where some of these isolated fats, like the added oils and the butter, and where that may get people into problems because those things don't in everybody lead to that kind of satiety. So it's easy to overeat. It's easy to take in a lot of excess energy when you're eating a lot of those foods, as opposed to something like a pork chop or a steak, something solid that's going to sit in your stomach for a while.
It could even be easier. I mean, if you're under eating protein as well. I mean, you mentioned, well, let me just back up 1 second and say this too. Now, I'm not saying that calories in, calories out is like the complete totality of everything. You just tell people restrict their calories, they're going to lose fat. That's obviously not true. But what I will say is that energy balance obviously matters. If you eat 8,000 calories of dietary fat, you're obviously not going to tap into your own body fat. You're not going to eat away at your own adipose tissue. And now a lot of people in the low carb world like to reference Volek and Finney. So Stephen Finney and Jeff Volek have done a lot of research on low carbohydrate diets. They've written several books, 2 books. One of them is like the New Atkins Diet, and another one was The Art and Science of Low Carbohydrate Living. If you look at Stephen Finney's most recent talk, I think it was at like Low Carb Down Under, he shows a chart and talks about exactly what we're talking about now with the 80% fat dogma. And he talks about how this doesn't mean that everybody eats 80% fat. He shows a chart and it basically says, if you're looking to lose body fat, yes, 80% of your caloric energy, the energy that you burn, will likely be coming from fat. But in this little pie chart, he shows that maybe only 40 to 50% of that will be dietary fat, whereas the rest of that will be coming from your own fat stores. Now, I just wanted to throw that out there because people like to to appeal to authorities and to reference authorities in the low carb world. And if you actually watch this video, he talks about the typical diet for his colleague Jeff Volek, and Jeff's youngish, healthy, active man. And he shows what he would typically eat in a day. And he would start his day off with like 4 pieces of sausage. For lunch, he would have like, I think it was 6 ounces of fish with a big salad. And for dinner, he would have about 8 ounces of steak with some sort of a fat source, maybe. And then some, he had like a cashew or something, like a dessert, like a low carb dessert. And this was an example meal plan that somebody who's been in this low carb world and who's referenced by these individuals who talk about restricting protein so much and this and that. The dude's sitting down and he's eating an 8-ounce steak for dinner. The extreme protein restriction that people are talking about, I think it's really important that we define it, right? Because everybody says, oh, too much protein. Well, what is too much protein? What is enough protein? And how do we define these parameters? And without just playing semantics games. So, yeah, I think, something else I wanted to say is all the studies that they've done they're not all the studies that they've done, but if you look at a lot of the scientific research on satiety and on people, now I'm not even talking about metabolic ward studies, but increasing protein across the board will usually result in decreased total calories and in losing more body fat. So, I mean, all the research completely lines up with what you're saying, that some people just need a little bit more protein than these gerbil portions. And not every bite of protein is going to turn into chocolate cake. So let's talk about the protein issue a little bit more for now. I mean, you talked about how it's perhaps the most important macronutrient. How can people go about finding how much protein they might be requiring? And how do you go about telling them how much protein they should eat?
Good question. Generally, most of the clients I get, especially, well, the women more so than the men, in my opinion, are chronically starving for protein. They're under eating protein. Partly, if they're new to this way of eating, it's because that's just the way the normal, American woman diet is. It's a salad with like 2 ounces of chicken, and you think that's enough. But even on a low carb diet now, or on a ketogenic diet, people have become concerned about this issue of quote unquote too much protein, spiking their blood glucose or spiking insulin. And that word spike is problematic to begin with. A 10 or 15 point jump in your blood sugar from spike, that's your body doing what it's supposed to do in response to a dietary protein load. Protein is such a contentious issue. It's difficult to determine how much you need. I think most people are under eating it, so we can start from there, a baseline of just in general, people are probably not eating enough of it. But there's a lot of controversy.
How can somebody know if they're eating too much? Because seems to be the biggest, like, people are always so worried, well, am I eating too much protein? It's going to turn to sugar, right? Because that's what they told me on the internet, that every bite of protein I take in that's excess turns to sugar. So I might as well just eat Frosted Flakes instead.
Yeah, it's a good question how someone can determine if it's too much. I guess you could check your blood sugar. If it's rising like crazy dramatically, then yeah, maybe there's a problem. But it's so hard to overeat protein because it is so filling. Your body won't let you gorge on steak. If you're doing protein powders or bars or something like that, it's probably easier to take in more. But even then, I just don't think anybody's going to reach a toxic threshold by eating real food. You have to work to eat I don't even like this word, but let's say a dangerous amount of protein. You have to put forth effort to do that. You're not going to do that by default, just eating your regular diet. And Donald Layman, he's a PhD he's like the protein guy. He's one of my favorite guys with regard to protein. He did a lecture where I forget the amount that he gave, but it was well over 200 grams a day of being kind of the danger zone. And it was, significantly over and above the amount anyone is going to normally eat. And there's debate, right? It's controversial, and I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. It's this like this tug of war between feeling your best and looking your best and being mobile and being flexible and being strong versus longevity. That's kind of the big thing with protein, right? A lot of people think if you eat a lot of protein, it works against longevity.
Right. So we're talking about the mTOR, insulin being, yeah,
Right.
when you do animal studies, right? If you reduce the insulin load of a mouse through its entire lifespan, it will live longer. If you reduce mTOR, the cancer rates will be decreased. So this is what we're talking about now. I mean, a lot of people are promoting fasting, for instance, and just keeping insulin and mTOR super, super low.
Right.
And these are kind of the two extremes, right? You've got the, well, you fast, keep mTOR low all the time versus the like, eat as much protein as you can because it'll help you eat less carbs and less fat. And
Yeah, and I guess it depends on the goals, but I don't know if we can even say in humans that this is a reasonable goal. You know, it's been done in fruit flies, it's been done in lower order animals. How many years of life extra are you going to get by consuming, 40 to 50 grams of protein a day as opposed to 100 grams of protein a day? And those years are going to come, you know, no secret here, those years are going to come at the end of your life. You're not going to get 5 more years of being 25. You're going to get more years in your 90s. You know, I'm not saying that's an unworthy goal or like an inappropriate goal, but I don't know if that even is a goal that's attainable. Is this going to happen in humans? And are you willing to take that bet? Do you want to eat very, very little protein for a number of decades on the chance that you might live a little longer? Um, but then, there's the other side of the coin. Do you want to eat as much protein as you feel like and protein to satiety and possibly live shorter? I mean, I just,
but these aren't
I,
guarantees. This is the thing. I mean,
right.
we're extrapolating from animal studies and animal models. And yeah,
And I'm not saying
we
there's
don't
no
want to
merit
ride,
in
I don't
that. I
want to
mean,
ride this all the way down the line because I mean, if you and I were just talking, this is what I, but I'd rather maybe take it into a more concrete realm for the audience. So let me just back up and I've got a question from the audience. Gloria says, I hear that macros, fat and protein is more important than calories in, calories out. Then she says a couple minutes later, then why do these Facebook groups make all these charts on how much protein to eat based only on your height? So this is the type of information that's out there in these groups where people are getting information on their diet. First of all, macros matter more than calories. Um, I mean, we can unpack that first, and then we could talk about Facebook groups giving protein recommendations based only on height. Yeah, I mean, this is what people are reading, and this is why she writes these articles that are meant to get people back on track. And so yeah, let's talk about the macros versus calories thing. Where does that come from, and where do you stand on the whole calories versus macros?
I think, study after study has sort of proven that calories do matter and people can lose weight on a low calorie diet of any kind, but it is, in my opinion anyway, at least, much more enjoyable and sustainable and easy to do when you get your macronutrients right for your body. And I just said right for your body because I'm not saying that everybody needs to be on a ketogenic diet. Not everybody needs to be ultra low carb. Some people do better with more carbs, whether it's for weight loss or blood sugar control. Some people can handle carbs just fine. And I'm not saying carbs from Pop Tarts and Lucky Charms cereal. I'm talking about, potatoes and rice and beets and things like that. I think, why do so many people report that when they're on a low carb diet, their hunger is normalized? People say, oh, I'm never hungry. I'm not hungry. I wrote a blog post about that a long time ago. You are hungry. It's not that you literally never, ever get hungry on a low carb or ketogenic diet. I mean, if that was the case, you would never eat. You would just never, ever eat. You get hungry, but your hunger is a normalized signal, right? You get hungry when it's been several hours since you've eaten. You don't get hungry because your blood sugar is crashing because you ate, an hour ago, but you had a donut and a latte. So it's not like it's not that you're not hungry on these diets, but your hunger is manageable. You don't get hangry, right? You don't get that combination of hungry and angry where you're irritable and you're lightheaded and you're going to kill somebody if you don't get fed in 2 seconds, you know. Um, so again, I hate to say that calories matter because I want to believe that they don't. I want to believe that you can just eat low carb and just eat as much as you want because calories don't matter. They do matter, but they are so much easier to manage when you are low carb because you normalize the hormones that are involved, I think, in satiety and appetite signaling. It's so much easier to limit the
This is so
calories.
important. So it's like the
Yeah,
best of both worlds, right? It's like, so yes,
right.
energy balance obviously matters. If you eat 10,000 calories, you're not going to burn all of that, and you're not going to burn your own body fat if you're eating more than you need. But
Right.
I think what's so important, where it gets twisted, and I think this is just maybe the nature of the internet, right? We have to take things to the utmost logical extreme in all cases necessary. And I almost stopped you earlier and stopped the broadcast when you said, I don't know, because I don't even think that's allowed on the internet. We're supposed to pretend that everybody knows everything here in the internet. So I can edit that out later if you want, Amy. Let's pretend we know everything, right? But yeah, I mean, it's like calories matter, but obviously hormone balance can play a huge role in your satiety signaling. I mean, leptin, ghrelin signaling, all these things are very, very important. And you can definitely torture hunger through decreasing carbohydrates and using approaches like a ketogenic diet, but they don't
And
negate the energy
I
balance.
want to add too, because we're talking about the protein. I get a lot of, again, usually female clients talking about how they eat. You know, well, I eat this for breakfast, then I have a snack, then I have lunch, then I have a snack. And I say, why are you snacking so much? Are you genuinely hungry? Like, A, are you hungry? B, are you snacking just because you're snacky and you just want something to do and it's a habit? Because most of the time, they're not eating enough protein. If they were eating much more protein at mealtime, they wouldn't need to snack. Their meal would keep them satiated for 4 or 5 hours, maybe even 3 or 4 hours before their next meal. The reason they're needing to snack is because they are still hungry, and they're still hungry because they have not had enough protein. I get so many people eating 2 eggs and some spinach. 2 eggs is
Yeah.
like 14 grams of protein.
Yeah, if
You
they're
know,
big
that's not
eggs,
enough. Yeah,
if
that's
they're
not
huge
enough for a
eggs,
meal. That is
come
not
on.
enough. It's just, I don't know if we've just been conditioned to eat small portions, or I don't know, but I feel like that has a big role in the hunger issue too, and in controlling caloric intake. I mean, why do we think all of the, what they call a protein sparing modified fast, or kind of like a crash diet, they're high protein, low fat, low carb, because protein is satisfying. You know, it's if you have to cut calories dramatically in order to lose weight, the one thing you don't want to cut is protein. You cut your fat, cut your carbs, do not cut the protein.
There you go.
That
So it's
says
like
it
the
all right
protein is the
there.
fulcrum in the middle, the fat and the carbs kind of balancing out the equation on the other side. So I think the
Yes.
protein.
Yes.
Um, all right, let's move on. Let's not make this a protein love fest.
Hmm.
Here's here's a really common thing that people will say, right? So here's a comment from Jim. He says your body can either burn fat or burn sugar slash carbs. It is one or the at the same time. Your body prefers to burn sugar slash carbs if available. I mean, it's just like this is the type of stuff you read online, right? Let's like the extremes. It can either burn fat or carbs. So then people might take that, and I think in a lot of cases they do take that as, wow, so the only way that I'm ever going to lose body fat is if I only burn fat. So therefore, cut my carbs low because obviously low carb is good. So then, even lower carbs probably better. And I think you hit on this in this article as well. Though low carb is good, so more low carb is more betterer. I
Well,
mean,
I
is
mean,
it
the first thing to know there is the human body is not a binary system. It's not carbs or fat, on or off, one or zero. It is not a binary system. I've written about this before too, a long time ago. Um, there are certain cells in the body that do not even have mitochondria. They cannot burn fats or ketones even if they wanted to. They have to use glucose or lactate or some other fuel. So like red blood cells, for example, and there's certain cells, I think, in the either in the kidneys or in the eyes and the retina. Certain cells do not have mitochondria. Now, granted, most of the body, yeah, as a general rule, you will be primarily using fat or carbohydrate, but it's not an on or off thing. It's not like if I'm a quote unquote fat burner or I'm fat adapted, it is not the case that you are using zero glucose. I mean, that is just flat out false.
And
And the
if you
thing about
ever eat glucose, that it's just going to completely screw up all your progress either, right? I mean, this is not.
that's a whole separate issue. We can talk about that in a second. Like if you eat, a donut and it kicks you out of ketosis, don't get me started on that.
Ooh.
But this the glucose thing, it's interesting that we think, glucose is the preferred fuel of the body because it's going to be used if it's available. Well, we could say the same thing about booze. Because if you're drinking alcohol, alcohol is the first and primary fuel of your body. It's going to use the alcohol before it uses anything else. So should we be running on alcohol all the time? Now, I'm not saying that whoever's asking this question is wrong. I mean, it's a good question, but
Yeah.
I think to say that glucose is used preferentially or first is not, that's maybe not the
Well,
best.
then the flip side, right? Well, you can only have a teaspoon of glucose in your blood because it's toxic in higher levels in your blood. Therefore, glucose is toxic. It should never be eaten. And the same alcohol argument could be used on that side too. So, I mean, does that even make sense the way I worded that? So it's like, okay, you must preferentially burn glucose because it's toxic. You must preferentially burn alcohol because you got to get it out of your blood because it's
Exactly, right,
toxic.
because if
It's
we use
semantics.
the same logic
Yeah.
as alcohol as glucose, I mean, we're gonna the minute there's alcohol in the system, that's what the body uses. And if I don't it doesn't necessarily work the same way with glucose. Like the minute you ingest glucose, you're gonna use glucose, but I just think that's kind of shaky logic, that it's
Yeah.
preferential. I mean, believe me, I don't think glucose is toxic. I write about this all the time, right? Considering I am a low carb and ketogenic friendly nutritionist, it's amazing how often I tell people to eat more carbohydrate. So I am definitely not anti-carb. I'm not anti-glucose. I just don't think that we're meant to be that quote unquote sugar burner all the time.
Yeah. So it's about balance, really. I mean, who would have thought that if you go too far in one direction that you can offset the entire system? And I like what you say about we're not a binary system. It's not either or, on, off. There's a spectrum there. It's like
It's not. Crack
analog.
open a biochemistry textbook someday. There are so many, it's like this interweaving, there's all these feedback loops and complex mechanisms that play into each other. I mean, there's rarely anything in the body that's on or off. Even when we use the terms inhibit, right? Such and such inhibits this enzyme, or such and such upregulates certain processes. It inhibits, it doesn't shut it off. It inhibits, it doesn't stop it completely, or it upregulates it. It doesn't turn it on full blast and it stops every other process in the body. I mean, we have to have kind of a high level view and an appreciation for how complex the body is. And that's especially with ketones, right? People measure their ketones, they're out of ketosis, it's 0.2, it's 3.2. And because they don't really understand what governs the production and the use of ketones. And it's so people get so hung up on the numbers when they don't even know what's making these ketones happen.
All right, let's pull that out of the hat. So what are some other things? All right, so obviously, if you restrict carbohydrates, if you fast, if you just don't eat anything, your ketones will jump astronomically. Also, if you eat a bunch of MCT, medium chain triglycerides, your ketones will jump as well. What is the relevance of this for somebody who's just trying to use this for optimizing their performance in their daily life, whether it be their mental cognition, their cognitive performance, or they just want to be a better mom or a better, or if it's an athlete even. What are the relevance of higher ketones, and what are some things that can affect it? Let's kind of dive into that world.
Well, the relevance depends on context, I think. For fat loss, not that important. For cognitive function, for sharp thinking, I think it could be pretty relevant to have higher ketones, but I don't think it's required. Some people might feel like total rock stars at a ketone level of, zero point 0.8 or 1.0. They might feel totally sharp. Someone else might not feel that same effect until they're at 3.0. I think that varies too. And why some people's bodies just seem to be able to generate higher levels of ketones more easily, even upon eating the same foods and doing the same workouts or getting the same sleep as somebody else, your ketone levels will just be different. So nobody's failing if their ketones are not above 2.0 or 3.0. You're not doing it wrong. There's hacks, like you said, fasting, exercise, lots of coconut oil or MCT oil. There are hacks to raise your ketones, but, see how you feel. Does it make any difference to you when you're higher versus lower? And the thing too is, when your ketones are high, is your body using them? It's kind of so Dave Feldman, there's this guy Dave Feldman who's doing a lot of really cool research on cholesterol, and some people here might not know who he is, but he kind of beats the drum about your ketone levels are really high, but that tells you nothing about whether your cells are using them. I mean, they could be accumulating in your blood because your cells are not using them that efficiently. So your ketones are high, whoop-de-doo. Always go by how you feel. It doesn't matter what your ketone levels are. It matters how you feel physically, mentally, cognitively, emotionally. That's what matters.
Yeah, and this is huge, and this is what I tell clients all the time. I mean, what is the relevance of measuring your blood ketones first of all, if it's just stressing you out every morning? If you wake up in the morning, your blood glucose is 85, you think you're failing for some reason, or if your blood glucose is 95 or 98 in the morning, your fasting blood glucose, when your cortisol naturally rises, when your blood sugar should be a little bit higher, this doesn't mean you're failing. Just because you're only at 0.4 on your ketones right after a workout doesn't mean that you got to back off that workout. You're getting out of the ketosis zone. I mean, people are spending $5 per ketone strip to measure their blood ketones. So if you're going to measure your blood ketones once a day for 5 days, that's $25 that you're spending
And
right there.
frankly, people need to understand, if you measure it, if you can afford to measure blood ketones, if you're measuring it once a day, it tells you almost nothing because your ketone levels will fluctuate wildly throughout the day. So you're getting a one-time snapshot with that measurement. It tells you nothing about what your ketones are going to be 2 hours from then or what they were 8 hours before. I'm not saying measuring is useless. There's people that just enjoy collecting data. There's nothing wrong with measuring, but don't live and die by the measurements. Don't put your whole self-esteem, your worth as a human being, or even necessarily the efficacy of your diet on these numbers. Because you could, let's say whether it's with blood glucose or with ketones, the same person could eat the same food and it could have a different effect depending on what's going on that day. Did they only get 4 hours of sleep the night before? Have they worked out? Did they, are they going to consume that food after a workout, or they're going to consume that food an hour after they already ate a full meal?
I mean, there's so many things that affect it, like blood glucose
Right.
level. You go out in the sun, like vitamin D will lower blood glucose level. Go out in the sun for 15 minutes, measure your blood glucose. Go out in the sun 15 to 20 minutes, peak sunlight, then measure your blood glucose again. Watch it drop. I've done this. There's other things too.
I never knew that. I just learned that. I never heard of that before.
I mean, it depends on situation too. If you're stressed out, right? So you're going to measure your blood glucose.
Right.
You're stressed out because you don't like poking holes in your body and drawing blood. Maybe your blood glucose is going to go up just from that stress of, I got to measure my blood glucose. So I mean, there's so much craziness. Also, if you're a stoner, you live in California, you smoke some pot, your blood glucose is going to drop. There's drugs that you could take that will drop blood glucose. There's so much going on. That we cannot just say, like, I don't know. I mean, this whole, you need to be below 80 in blood glucose to even be in ketosis. There's a lot of people that believe that and that say that.
False.
It's not
Completely
true.
false. False.
And where is there any research that shows this? There's not. The closest thing you could find is Seyfried and his theories on cancer management. And he's come up with a system of measuring blood glucose and blood ketones, and he believes it's relevant to longevity and health, but it doesn't mean that you need to be below 80 to be in ketosis. I mean, the whole thing has become too dogmatic, in my opinion, and too confusing to individuals. Go ahead.
There's nothing wrong with measuring. Like, I don't want people to think I'm anti-measuring. It's fine to measure if you understand how to interpret the numbers that you see. Just keep track of the data, see if there's trends over time, but don't live and die by these numbers. Somebody will eat something and their blood glucose goes up 10 points and they say, well, I guess I can't eat that food because it spiked my blood glucose. No, it didn't, or testing and measuring can be so helpful for certain reasons, but I almost wish it didn't exist, or it wasn't as readily accessible to the general public, because it is so misunderstood, and people just don't understand the numbers that they're seeing, and there's so much agita and there's so much stress and like anxiety over this, and I encourage people to not test unless there's really a pressing reason to do so. There's no reason to test if you're just trying to lose body fat or you're just trying to feel well. It really doesn't matter what your ketones are.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, if you're a data hound, if you love it, if you're into the biohacking, bro, that's great. That's cool. Enjoy it. Like, collect your data and enjoy it, but it's not necessary for progress. And the pee strips are useless across the board, in my opinion. I mean, you're peeing on these strips and it's just telling you dehydrate, and if you're dehydrated, you'll have less water volume in the urine and higher acetoacetate levels. That does not mean you're in deeper ketosis. It just means you didn't drink enough water. Or if you drank a bunch of water, you might not think you're in ketosis when you pee on these little useless strips. But yeah, I mean, if you do want to quantify it, blood serum beta hydroxybutyrate is the gold standard. It's the way to go. And don't waste your money on these pee strips. This is, I don't know, I think we've hit enough on this subject, but yeah, I mean, let's move on a little bit. We've talked about energy balance, talked about the importance of protein. Is there anything else that comes to mind that's interesting you at the moment? It doesn't even have to be low carb or keto related even. Is there anything else that
I could just talk about this one other thing that I wrote about in that big post, and that's the notion that there are certain foods that are and are not keto or prohibited on a ketogenic diet, specifically some of the slightly sweeter, slightly higher carbohydrate vegetables. Somebody could post a picture of their dinner and someone says, oh, carrots aren't keto, peppers aren't keto. And it's like, okay, who made you the food police? Who made you the food police? That's number one. Mm-hmm. And then, people, like you said earlier, the threshold carbohydrate amount that some people can consume and still be in ketosis, if being in ketosis even matters, if that even matters, some people can eat upwards of 50 to 60 grams of carbohydrate and still be in ketosis. Some people have to stay under 20 or 30 grams. But if you're one of these people that can do 40 to 60 grams, guess what? You can eat a larger array of vegetables and even fruit and still be in ketosis. So I just think, like, there's people that, I mean, because I get people writing to me that literally are only eating, chicken and steak and spinach or cabbage because they think that tomatoes are too high in sugar, or they think red peppers are not keto. And this is madness. It's madness. I just, like, I'm at a loss for words. I use my words in my post instead. Like, I don't know how this came about. Dr. Atkins would be rolling in his grave to hear this kind of thing. Yeah. It's just, if somebody's happy eating a very, very limited diet, then by all means keep following it. But if your life is impinged upon because you find it impossible to go out to dinner because there's nothing you can order that doesn't come with some sort of vegetable that's unacceptable or something. Lighten up. There's so much food shaming and just rules about this stuff that for no reason. They don't need to exist.
Yeah, I mean, you can get results. You can have a few bites of carrots with your salad. You don't have to freak out about it. I mean, how many grams of carbs are even in, I mean, say 50 grams of carrots. It's not that significant, people. So there's another question that just came to mind. All right, so we're talking about the restriction of carbohydrate sources. A lot of people have been asking in the comments section about zero carbs, like zero carb diets. Now, it's something that I haven't really talked about much. I talked to Andrew Scarborough. However, he's been dealing with, he's been managing cancer using a ketogenic diet. And Andrew uses a zero carb approach because he's found that he was very sensitive to certain things like salicylates and other compounds in plant foods. Now, there's a lot of other individuals who think that, okay, so lower carb's pretty good, therefore zero carb must be even better. What do you think about that?
I have mixed feelings because I think zero carb diets can actually be very therapeutic for some people. There are people with very severe digestive issues, some of the people with the autoimmune issues who, maybe they tried the GAPS diet or they tried the SCD, the specific carbohydrate diet. They've tried some of these really strict elimination diets and maybe got a certain amount of progress, but they didn't resolve all their symptoms. They still had issues going on. A lot of them find that when they completely cut out plant foods and they eat only foods from the animal kingdom, they tend to do really, really well. There's also people that have reported, I guess you would call it remission of binge eating, because nobody binges on pork. Nobody binges on ground beef. We binge on, obviously the sweets, sugars, bread, carbohydrates, starchy grains, even potatoes, mac and cheese, we binge on starches. But there are some people who, even if they're eating low carb vegetables like broccoli or, something else, it triggers something in their brain that turns on cravings, like insatiable cravings for other foods that really are not going to be all that helpful on this type of diet. And those people find that if they just have zero plant food whatsoever, their urge to binge is completely gone. So I think I'm actually pretty fascinated by zero carb because there are several people who, if they are to be believed, right, if we take them at their word, they've been doing this for years and they feel great, they look great, they don't have scurvy, they don't have rickets, they don't develop nutrient deficiencies, they're thriving. So
Yeah. Owsley, actually, zero carb thing. One of the original guys, I don't know if you know Owsley Stanley. He
the
was
bear, he's
the
pretty
Bear,
controversial.
the LSD manufacturer from, he used to manufacture LSD for the Grateful Dead.
Yeah.
He was supposedly really into the zero carb thing for a long time, and he died of a car accident.
I think there's a place for zero carb, but I'm totally with you on the falsity of like just because low carb is good, zero carb must be better. If
Right,
people
or
want to try it,
because low carb works for a lot of people. Because low carb works for a lot of people, then carbs are bad.
right.
I mean, or yeah, I mean, all right. So let's go the opposite end of the spectrum. Vegan diet, so the V word. Can you do a vegan low carb diet? Is people ever tell you, I want to do a vegan ketogenic diet? Will you help me out with this? What do you think about vegan diets in general, as a nutritionist? And what did you get a lot of people asking you to formulate vegan ketogenic diets for you? Because I know I do. I have to tell them no, can't.
Oh, that's interesting. I haven't had anyone ask about that. I've had some recovering vegans come to me who are reintroducing meat. Can you do a low carb or ketogenic vegan diet? yes, but I do not recommend it because I just think you're not you can do a vegan low carb diet. It would be harder to do vegan ketogenic because you're not going to get enough protein. I mean, the major source of protein on a vegan diet is going to be beans and legumes. And on a strict ketogenic diet, those would probably be prohibited just because of the carbohydrate amount. But if you're going low carb as opposed to strict ketogenic, you can do beans, because let's say you want to be under 100 grams a day, you could still do beans. I still think you're probably not going to get enough protein unless you're supplementing with like hemp protein or pea protein powder. You wouldn't do whey or, and I wouldn't recommend soy. So soy protein is
Right.
going
It
to
would
be
be a
out.
very, very limited diet. That's what I tell people. It's like, look, you can try it. I'm not going to try to tell you not to be a vegan, but I can't help you with anything like this because
I
I
wouldn't
don't
do
feel
it.
like I could do it safely and just
And
wouldn't feel
vegan
right about
diets in general, if I'm going to comment about vegan diets in general, I understand the logic of wanting to do it for ethical reasons. I understand that. However, I've worked on farms, I've worked on livestock farms. I know how these processes can be done humanely and beautifully, where they are environmentally stable and sustainable. You can't have healthy soil without animal manure, period. You need animals grazing on the soil. So, that aside, ethical reasons aside, if somebody wants to do a vegan diet for ethical reasons, by all means do it, but don't kid yourself into thinking that you're doing it for your health, because you're not. And if you are doing it
it.
for ethical
What
reasons
about the
and you
China study?
insist, I mean, what do you want me to say there? Go read Denise Minger's blog, right? That's everybody's response. I mean, the China study is just
Yeah.
such I don't even know what to say about that.
No, I'm sorry.
That
That
would
was
be,
like that. It just opened up a door down a long, dark corridor of
yeah. I
useless
just
bickering.
I just
I
I
had
just
to
would
say it
say,
though.
if somebody wants to do a vegan diet, do it, but do it smartly. You better supplement because you're going to need it. You will need B12, you will need zinc, you will need vitamin D, you'll need DHA. Like, if you insist on going completely without animal foods, then you better supplement, because you do it for animal rights if you want, don't do it for your health.
Yeah, there you go. And Amy was really nice there. I'll go ahead and say that ethical veganism is a complete myth. Plant-based agriculture is equally as destructive as animal husbandry. There's no culture in the history of humanity that's ever done a vegan diet. There is no such thing as a vegan ecosystem anywhere in the world. Every single plant you eat requires dead, rotting animal matter to
Mhm.
grow. You need worms to be eating bugs. You need these things. You need animal input for vegetable food, unless you're just growing it with a bunch of phosphate-based fertilizers and highly destructive things like glyphosate that chelate the soil and destroy swaths of land and are turning the United States into a dust bowl as we speak. And they're doing the same thing worldwide. I mean, that you look at the red palm oil, the palm oil plantations all over Ecuador. They just clear cut the forests. They plant these stupid palm trees, and then they sell it as a so-called, sustainable, ethical product. There's no such thing as ethical agriculture. I mean, if you really want to go down that rabbit hole, all agriculture is going to be destructive. And I mean, these are basically religious arguments that we're coming down to. And yeah, so I don't know. Don't try to argue with me about this too. And if you're vegan, don't make negative comments. I've already had to put somebody on timeout. I haven't banned you, Kevin
Mm.
Mann, because you're hilarious and you're entertaining and you follow me obsessively. And I know you live all the way up in Canada, and you're not going to come and bother me physically. So you can keep on trolling, but you will be put on timeout for your naughty comments in the comment section there, you crazy vegan hipster. Um,
We still love
all
you.
right. I still love you. That's why I haven't banned you, man. I ban a lot of your other vegan minions, but I think you're funny. All right. So I think we've hit on so much, and this has been a great conversation. Amy, where can people find your work? And well, I mean, maybe if there's anything else that you'd like to hit on, I think we've hit on so many of the myths that come to mind for me now, or maybe I've just been staring at a screen too long, my brain's not working right. But
Ah,
yeah,
I'll
is there
just
anything else you wanna-
I'm going to shamelessly plug my book. I have a book coming out in March. It's called The Alzheimer's Antidote, and it's about using a low-carb or ketogenic diet to basically restore healthy cognitive function in Alzheimer's disease, in cognitive decline, or MCI, mild cognitive impairment. So it's available for pre-order on Amazon. Pick up a copy for yourself and 1,000 of your closest friends. Um, Other than that, no, I just, if I can sort of leave people with anything, it's just that I am absolutely in favor of ketogenic diets for the right purpose. I am even more in favor of using a more general term, which is low carb diet. I don't know when that term became passe, but I wish more people would just say low carb instead of ketogenic, because I think a lot of the confusion comes just from the word ketogenic. I don't know. I'm not opposed to these diets. I hope I made it very clear on my blog. I think they're great, but people have to know how to apply them and what the limitations are and what they're appropriate for. You know, and to
Yeah.
not everyone on the planet needs to be on a ketogenic diet. You know, beets and
And
parsnips
there's
are not
a big
poisonous.
difference, right? There's a big difference between a medical ketogenic diet and a ketogenic diet that the typical individual is looking for fat loss, improved cognitive function, etc., is going to be
Right.
utilizing. So I think the semantics of it all was a really big takeaway for me, especially with this with your article on Tuit, Tuit nutrition.com. And what's the name of your book again?
It's called The Alzheimer's Antidote.
All right. Well, I can't wait to get a copy of that one. Um, I'd love to have you on again. Maybe when the book is ready, you can come on and
Oh,
we can
definitely. That'd be
leave
great.
all this confusion behind us, and we can talk about the Alzheimer's antidote and talk
Yes.
about your new content. So I'd love to have you on again, Amy. It's been a pleasure talking, and you guys can find more at primaledgehealth.com. Make sure to subscribe, like it if you like it, share it with your friends and family. And, I'm going to have to shamelessly plug my wife and mine Ketogenic Edge Cookbook. You can check out the Ketogenic Edge Cookbook at primaledgehealth.com. It's all whole foods ingredients. It all has sufficient protein, and the macros are laid out there to a T. And none of these recipes contain gobs and gobs of excess fat. It's fat loss friendly macros. We call it a training manual for low carb, ketogenic, and paleo cuisine because it's just that. It's there to train you how to make high quality, nutrient dense, whole foods, low carb meals. And that's what it's all about. There's a lot of theory in there. There's an entire section on using organ meats. There's a section on teaching you how to use spices to bring out certain flavors and whatnot. So if you're just getting into low carb diets, this is a training manual that will definitely help you out. Let's hold on. And yeah, you guys check out more. You can find Amy at Tuit, Tuit nutrition.com. Thanks so much for coming on, Amy. I look forward to talking to you again.
Thanks for having me. Great to see you. Have a good day.
All right. Let's see. Stop broadcast.